Acknowledge that we are, of course, gathered here on the traditional territory of Signatory 67, and also recognize the Métis peoples, which are very deep connection with this land. I'm here today seeking your support to be Premier of Alberta. I also come forward as a person who deeply loves this province and who has devoted much of my professional life to making things better for Albertans. I'm deeply concerned about all that we have seen today. Extremism being shouted from the steps of the legislature, aid to transphobia, and a furthering of a division that only serves to harm Alberta. This is the fringe of the fringe, and this is the quote Danielle Smith was given for content. This is appeared in the justice system for. She broke the law in order to get Artur Pawlowski's charges dropped. Artur is a man convicted of mischief around his efforts, in part, to incite violence against the police. Danielle Smith has actually given him a platform. And this is only the beginning. If Danielle Smith is elected Premier, this is what the next 4 years is going to look like. Enough is enough. It is exhausting. There is, however, one way to put a stop to all of this, and that is by electing a new Alberta NDP government on Monday. Let's get back to focusing on what should matter, like healthcare. Today, 190 emergency room physicians wrote a letter raising the alarm that emergency care here in Calgary is in crisis. The system, they say, is collapsing around these frontline physicians. They specifically point to decisions that were taken by this UCP government over the last 4 years as a critical part of the cause. And they contradict what we've heard from Danielle Smith, who claims she's fixed it all. Albertans, you deserve a government that will work tirelessly to deliver better health care for you and for your loved ones. And that will also focus on your priorities. Polls are open. Your vote matters. You can go and you can vote for a better future right now. So thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions folks might have.
For everyone here on location, I know we can't quite hear speaker here, but just so that everyone on Zoom hears as well, could you come over to ask your question at the microphone? I know. This is going to make you take a little walk around, Emma, please. I'd appreciate it. But that makes it a lot easier for everybody. And so, yeah, please feel free to line up behind me, introduce yourself by name and outlet, and we'll kick off. Please go ahead.
Hello, I'm Nicole with CTV Calgary. So my question today is about how Danielle Smith said today that she will not be allowing Jennifer Johnson into her caucus. Would the NDP be open to picking her up if it meant a tiebreaker in the election?
Listen, the remarks made to Jennifer by Jennifer Johnson in Ponoka were absolutely offensive, and no, we would not be open to having her in our caucus. Frankly, though, I don't believe Danielle Smith when she says that. We see contradictory information coming from the UCP Constituency Association in Lacombe-Ponoka. It seems to me that the UCP itself is not clear about the position they will take on this. Danielle Smith has actually changed positions on it a couple of times since the matter first arose. So I think we can conclude that we cannot count on the UCP to make the right decision. She should not be sitting in the legislature.
Hi, Michael Serapio with CPAC. Ms. Notley, first and foremost, you continue to make this, or try to make this, a choice about leadership for Albertans. But we continue to hear from Albertans who still view this as an economic choice. They believe the UCP is the safer economic alternative. What do you say to those voters who find it too long of a walk to go from a traditional conservative vote to vote for NDP?
Well, I would say that one of the most important things that we need to grow and diversify our economy and to create good jobs is stability and predictability. And Danielle Smith's leadership is the exact opposite of that. And don't rely on me to say that. Rely on her former finance minister, who's not actually running with her this time. He has said that her Sovereignty Act, as just one small example, amounts to something that is destabilizing to investor confidence and therefore economic growth. That was before we had a report of the ethics commissioner that said very clearly that Danielle Smith chose to break the law in service of promoting the interests of someone who was, among other things, inciting violence against police. So those things are that's the foundation of economic growth. Now, I'm also, however, very proud of the economic plan that we've rolled out. We have a plan to take Alberta from having the lowest corporate taxes in the country to having the lowest corporate taxes in the country. And by doing that, we will have the resources necessary to invest in other things that investors are telling us they need to see. They need to see incentives for critical emerging economic sectors. They need to see a cut to the small business tax, a complete elimination of the small business tax to the majority of small business owners who actually employ 1 million Albertans. And they also need to see investment again in our post-secondary institutions because they are key partners in our economic growth, and they have been sustaining massive cuts under the UCP over the last 4 years. So all of this comes together in a way to create a stable, thoughtful economic plan for the future. And all of which is delivered within a well-costed fiscal plan that actually now projects a bigger surplus than what the UCP is running on.
That's the plan going forward, Ms. Notley. But what about your past record? Because that is what the UCP keeps pointing to. What would you say about your past record economically and what that has done for Albertans?
Well, what I will say is a good portion of what the UCP is suggesting about our past economic record is either taken incredibly out of context, is the subject of tremendous hyperbole, or is not correct. We ended our time in government with about 43,000 new jobs. We did that during the biggest recession that we had seen in at least 2 generations. We received about $25 billion in oil and gas revenue compared to the UCP, who received $70 billion in oil and gas revenue. And most Alberta voters understand that the government of Alberta does not control the price of oil. And as a result of that, you have to work responsibly with the hand that you're dealt. And that's what we did during our time in office. And I believe very strongly that we have the plan going forward to create jobs, to diversify the economy, to run a responsible fiscal plan, and to put Alberta on a very, very stable economic footing going forward.
Just a reminder, if you're on Zoom, please push the raise hand function, or if you're on the phone, push *9. We'll go back to questions here on location.
It's Hannah Said from City News. Following up to what you said about Danielle Smith changing her stance on Jennifer Johnston. Even today she did not take the questions and she said that she will not be allowed to sit in the caucus. Why do you think she's saying that? She's also talked about redemption in the past for Jennifer Johnston. Do you think she's not tackling the issue right now because she's unclear on her stance for the future?
I think that Danielle Smith has a lot of people in and around her party who hold the similar extremist views as Jennifer Johnston. Jennifer Johnston is not the first candidate to articulate those opinions. And it's very clear that the UCP that Danielle Smith is leading right now is not the same UCP that we had 4 years ago. That people with extremist views have a much bigger voice in that party. We saw that today with the statements taken by Arthur Pawlowski as well, and so that's why she's hedging, because too many folks who share those offensive views actually, unfortunately, have a place in the UCP right now.
Sorry, just a follow-up. Do you think there are chances of Jennifer Johnston coming back to the caucus? That's why she's not saying anything definitive right now, Danielle Smith?
I'm sorry, pardon me?
Danielle Smith is not saying anything definitive right now because there are chances that Jennifer Johnston might be back in the caucus after redemption.
Yeah, I think it's very likely that Danielle Smith will welcome Jennifer Johnston back into their caucus, notwithstanding the fact that she has articulated some of the most hurtful, hateful statements about some of the most vulnerable young children that we have seen in this province ever. And I think the fact that that is the case goes to the issue of leadership, and the fact that she won't speak to it goes to the issue of trust. And these are both important issues in this upcoming election.
G'day, Emma Graney with the Globe and Mail. What do you think this election here in Alberta means for Canada more broadly?
You know, that's a very big picture. I think right now I'm most focused on this election being about Albertans. I think I'm most focused about ensuring that in this election, Albertans are able to choose a government that will be there for Albertans, that will protect and restore our healthcare, that will work with those 190 emergency room physicians we heard from this morning, that will ensure stability in terms of our government as a whole and in terms of our economic future and our economic path going forward. Obviously, I'm a Canadian. I care about our country. I have always been of the view that we don't need to take back Alberta. Alberta needs to lead Canada, and that is exactly my view of what an Alberta led by the Alberta NDP will focus on doing.
But surely, Alberta is one of the Canadian economic leaders, right? So there must be some broad implications. And then further to that, then how does an Alberta NDP differ from NDPs in other parties or indeed federally?
Well, I think the key issue is not how we differ or not differ. I think what the key issue is that an Alberta NDP government will be absolutely laser focused on growing the economic performance and the economic capacity of Alberta and Albertans, both within the province and as part of Canada and as a proportion of Canada's economic growth. I think there are very important decisions that need to be taken. I think we need to be, as a province, ambitiously looking to where the economy is moving and making sure that we take our rightful place there. And so, as far as I'm concerned, all of that work must be done and coordinated and planned through the lens of ensuring the best for Albertans, the greatest number of jobs, the most fairness for Albertans, the most economic prosperity for Albertans.
Hi, there's billions of dollars of carbon capture projects right now that are being proposed for the province, everything from power generation to the oil sands to the cement industry. What specifically would you do to try and activate that, and how much would it cost if you've got any programs designed to incent those projects?
Well, I think, first of all, I think that's a really important issue. We do need, as a provincial government, to very quickly get to work on getting so many of those CCUS and other projects over the finish line, getting them to start. The federal government has stepped up to do some of that work. I think there is more for the federal government to do now that we've seen the Inflation Reduction Act and the incentives that are being offered south of the border. But it's also very possible that there is a role for the provincial government to play. Now, we've already talked about our Alberta Futures tax credit, but there may be more for us to do. But I think that's something that honestly needs to be negotiated with some of the players. Through, again, the lens of ensuring the best deal for Albertans and making sure that it makes sense for Albertans in terms of the benefit that comes back to Albertans. And of course, the companies themselves also need to be prepared to come to the table to make their own investments in ensuring that they're reducing their emissions and that the product that they produce is one that, of course, will attract more space in international markets.
The oil and gas industry right now, I guess, is wondering whether they should be looking to increase production as we go forward. Do you think that is possible in this province? Are there programs that you're prepared to put in place to make that happen specifically? And can you do that at the same time as you reduce emissions?
I think that as we engage in more and more work to effectively reduce emissions, there's likely room for production to increase. But and when people say that bringing down emissions is the same as a production cap, that is wrong. That is not true. It is intentional misinformation on the part of the folks who are saying it. I think it is possible to have production increase if the work is done to significantly reduce emissions. But we need to do that work to reduce emissions. So we are focused on emissions reduction, and through that, in fact, increasing our takeaway capacity and increasing the benefits to Albertans, and very possibly in many cases increasing production. But it has to be within the context of reducing emissions.
Rick Bell, Post Media. This morning, Danielle Smith tried to tie you to the Trudeau government. Not the first time. And she said, when you look at Ms. Notley, she basically gave the federal government the agenda they're running on now. Just transition, phasing out coal, spiking the price of power bills, emission caps, carbon tax. They are all her ideas. And then she says basically she'll stand up to Ottawa if she becomes premier. And if you become premier, you won't stand up to Ottawa. You'll be sort of on Ottawa's side as opposed to opposing. What do you say to her comment?
Well, I will say a couple things. First of all, I think that Danielle Smith's lack of judgment on so many different fronts over the last 6 months means that she is the absolute worst person to be a credible advocate for the people of this province in Ottawa or frankly anywhere else. So that's the first thing. The second thing that I will say is I believe that Albertans are entrepreneurial, optimistic, and ambitious. And we understand that world markets, international markets, are looking for different things from our oil and gas producers. They're looking for us to reduce our emissions. They're looking for us to be the safest, most sustainable producer of oil and gas. And so we need to get to that place. And so that's about growing our economy. And I have said before, and I will say again, people who pit the economy against environmental responsibility are doomed to fail on both. If you are ambitious, if you are entrepreneurial, if you are creative, as we are in Alberta, we can do what is necessary to grow our markets across Canada, across the world. But if we pretend that the markets aren't changing and that the world is like it was 25 years ago, all Albertans will be left behind. And that is the future that Danielle Smith and the extremists around her are offering right now.
And just as supplementary, Mr. Speaker, I'll give you a morning quote from, or Madam Speaker. I'll give you a Danielle Smith quote again from this morning, and I think you'll be able to just give your reflections on what this means. I think people should judge me by what I've done as opposed to what I've said.
Well, I think people need to judge her on both issues. I think people need to judge Danielle Smith by what she's done and by what she's said, because the two contradict each other regularly, and not just one against one, but one against one and then against the other and then against the other and then against the other. It is a bouncing ball that people are finding it very, very exhausting to keep track of. The reality is that she has, on multiple fronts, spent 15 years campaigning to make people pay out of pocket for their health care. She has gagged herself on that for the last 6 months, but at the same time, she has a deputy premier who just last week said that he thought people should have to pay to get into emergency rooms, and maybe that was a way to help deal with the overcrowding in emergency rooms. So, in fact, let's judge her on what she's both said and done, and all those things together means she can't be trusted to fix our health care. Let's judge her by what she's said and done when it comes to interfering with the administration of justice and breaking the law. She's flip-flopped several times over whether she's done that, but she's been also observed and described by other people as having done that. So by all means, judge her on either. It doesn't really matter. It's not going to add up well on either front.
Take some questions from the phone now. We're going to start with Times of Asia. Please unmute yourself and go ahead.
Daniel Smith talked to Orthodoxy for 11 minutes and how he says he was bribed and has more videos. So what do you have to say about this?
Well, listen, I think the real problem here is that someone like author or Art Pulowski his voice, the volume on his voice has been turned up considerably, and that is because Danielle Smith is in the Premier's office. And quite honestly, the quickest answer to this is to get her out of the Premier's office and to elect a different government on Monday. What I will say, however, is that we have seen through video, through the Ethics Commissioner's report, through consideration of that report by other legal experts, and then through the allegations, and granted, entirely unfounded allegations today so far, but we don't know, they're allegations, they're there, that Art Pawlowski and extremists like him have far too much influence in the Premier's office. And what that means is that very bad decisions are being made. And what that also means is that really important work isn't being done, like dealing with the desperately important issues raised this morning by 190 emergency room physicians here in Calgary who describe a system that is collapsing around them because of the actions of this government.
Do you have a follow-up question? Hearing none, we will go to our next question from Lisa Johnson at the Edmonton Journal. Lisa, please unmute yourself and go ahead. Lisa, are you there?
Hello, Michaela Henschel, Global News.
Oh, I apologize. I clearly unmuted the wrong person, but please go
Okay.
ahead anyways.
Hello.
Okay, thank you. Hi, thank you so much. Just want to ask, there's been a lot of negative campaigning in this election between the UCP and the NDP. Do you think any of this is distracting from actual policy issues that need to be addressed for voters who are yet undecided still?
You know, I think there are important issues to be discussed in this election. I care deeply. Will have more access to mental health care and also have access to more prescription drugs. So those are things we've talked about. Some folks will hear that. Some folks will hear some of the backing and forthing that's going on in terms of whether Danielle Smith herself can be trusted to deliver on any of those kinds of issues that I just spoke about. So yeah, that's where it is. I think we've put forward a tremendously propositional offer to Albertans, and I hope that they take the time to sift through all the things that we've been talking about over the course of the last however many days it is, 24. We're very focused on healthcare, creating jobs, making life more affordable, and providing reliable government. Folks can vote starting yesterday. Go out and vote.
Do you have a follow-up?
Thank you so much.
Okay, we'll go to the next question from Alana Smith. Please go ahead.
Oh, hi. Thanks for taking my question. So there's been some critiques that the NDP's policy on raising corporate taxes was a misstep, and that it could or already has turned off some business-minded kind of Calgary voters. I'm just wondering your response to that.
Well, I mean, I guess we'll see. The voters will tell us what they think about our whole proposition for sure. I believe very much that this is the right thing to do. We are taking the lowest corporate tax rate in the country, and we are moving it to be the lowest corporate tax rate in the country, lower than Scott Moe's, lower than Doug Ford's. So business people who suggest that they would leave because of this, well, frankly, I don't exactly know where they would go. Moreover, the UCP, when they introduced this experiment of dramatically handing over tax income to profitable large corporations, they claimed that we would get a whole bunch of benefits from it. They said head offices would be stupid not to move or crazy not to move to Alberta. But we have fewer head offices in Alberta now than we did before they announced this. And at the same time, what we've also got is the largest class sizes between K to 12 in the country. We didn't used to have that, but now we do. We saw almost $750 million taken out of our post-secondary. They used to be affordable. Now we have the most expensive post-secondary in the country. We have a healthcare system in crisis. All of those things go to economic stability and our capacity for economic growth and entrepreneurialism.
Lana, do you have a follow-up?
I do think so. I just wanted to ask you about that letter from the ER docs. So they highlighted lack of access to primary care in Alberta, lack of hospital beds, and then a critical healthcare labor shortage. Just wondering if you can address kind of all three of those points and how the NDP would deal with those.
Absolutely. So first of all, let me say that that with all of this, we need to restore respect for all of our frontline healthcare providers. So what we will do is we will listen to what they are telling us is happening in the system, as opposed to trying to claim that everything's fine. And I look forward, in fact, to being able to meet with the folks that actually signed that letter. But specifically to what they're talking about, with respect to family doctors, we know that's a challenge. And that's why we've spent a lot of time talking about what is a very ambitious plan to expand access to family medicine to 800,000 Albertans over the course of the next several years, because we know how critically important that is. We've also talked about increasing investment in healthcare overall and increasing hospitals, going forward with the South Edmonton Hospital, going forward with the Red Deer Hospital, moving forward on a North Calgary campus. All of those things will help with space. And then the third thing, when it comes to the workforce shortage, we will embark upon the most ambitious effort to recruit and train more healthcare professionals here in Alberta than we've ever seen. But as even the doctors themselves say in their letter, the first place to start with that is establishing a respectful relationship with those healthcare providers. We will not refer to them as tyrants. We will not rip up their contracts. We will not demonize the science that drives their professionalism. We will support them, and we will celebrate them for the very, very important work that they do for all of us in our community.
We have time for one last question. We're going to go to Julian at Radio Canada. Julian, please go ahead.
Hi, thanks for taking my question. So, what were your expectations for your campaign, and were they achieved?
Were my expectations for this campaign achieved? Well, it's a little premature to say that. My expectation is that we will win, and I feel very confident that we will win. But I believe probably for me to say that expectation has already been achieved, I probably have to wait till folks finish voting. Certainly, I've been very excited by the level of activism and participation and momentum from our campaign and from our volunteers. Thousands and thousands of volunteers all across this province working every day to talk to their neighbors about how we can build a better future here in Alberta. I've been inspired by the folks that have stepped up to do this work, to make their province a better place, and I'm deeply grateful to all of those Albertans who have been part of this campaign.
Julian, do you have a follow-up question? Hey, we have a follow-up question from someone on the phone. Please wait. Julian, do you have a follow-up question?
Yeah, a quick one. You attack Danielle Smith's competency and skill as a premier, and I was wondering, do you feel that those attacks worked for you this campaign?
Well, again, as I say, the campaign is not over, but certainly what we are hearing from Albertans, people who've never voted NDP ever in their life, who never thought they would vote NDP, they are saying that Danielle Smith and the UCP do not represent the conservative movement and the values that they believe that they've held their whole life. The rule of law, respect for evidence, stable, predictable government, transparency, accountability, practical solutions, those kinds of things, that's not what we're seeing from Danielle Smith or the folks around her. And so what we are hearing from a growing number of Albertans is that they're going to vote NDP for the first time.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. Appreciate you coming.
Is that done? Sorry?
Ms. Notley, can you just comment on the polls? Just one on the polls, please. How are you feeling about the polls right now, going into the final days of this campaign?
Well, I think that they're pretty much the same as they have been throughout the campaign. They're very, very close. It's too tight to call. And so I would say to every Albertan who is really passionate about building a better future for this province, go out and vote. And if you need information about how to do that, vote.albertandp.ca. Check out that website. You can get more information on how to do it. Advanced voting is open now. You can do it all the way to Saturday. And then, of course, E-Day is on Monday. But by all means, get out there and vote right now.
Thanks very much, everyone.
Thank you.